Welcome to Hope Shot. I'm Sonia, and I'm so glad that you can join me today. Today, I have a very special guest on, my friend and recovery creator, Brandy. Thank you so much for joining me today, Brandy. So,
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
yes. So, Brandy is going to tell you her story from her addiction into where she's at today. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. Go right ahead, Brandy.
All right. My name is Brandy, and I'm definitely an addict in recovery. My clean date is 12/15/19. Although that's not when my recovery journey started. I'll go into that later. I was born in Big Spring, Texas. My mom and dad, and they were both workers. They decided to move to Florida when I was about 7. So we moved to Bradenton, Florida, where I spent the remaining part of my childhood. Um, so my mom was a nurse and my dad is an accountant, and I was an only child. So I grew up with no siblings. I didn't have to share things. I got a lot of attention, and although we weren't rich monetarily, I was definitely spoiled in attention and love. So, and that'll make sense later. So, when I got to Florida, we moved around a lot, apartment to apartment. My parents were trying to get back on their feet. My dad was looking for a job, so I changed schools probably at least 8 times before I got to high school. And for me, that was kind of traumatic because I would get one place, make some friends, and then have to uproot and find a whole new group of friends with people who had been in school together their whole lives. And so it was really hard for me. Looking back now, I can see how my disease thinking was even working back then. I never felt like I fit in. I was always trying to look the part of the group that I was trying to be a part of. And that changed so much over time. Like I went through the hip hop stage and the raver scene and all. It's the crazy part about that was none of that was me. It was just a mask I was putting on so I could be accepted and feel a part of. And even still, I would be friends with people I still never felt a part of. So when I was 15 years old, I went over to a friend's house and we decided to party, and drank a whole lot, took some ecstasy, and I got raped. And and so and I was a virgin, so it was a double whammy there. And the guy that did that was a manager at this restaurant that we worked at, and so it was one of those deals I just never told anybody. I felt like ashamed. Maybe if I wouldn't have been doing drugs and drinking, that wouldn't have happened. That maybe it was my fault. And so progressed from there. I really started to use a lot then. I started getting into the rave scene, and that culture, with the right amount of drugs, I felt like I fit in. We got to dance a lot and have a lot of fun. But I knew that if I was going to, my parents decided to move to North Carolina at that time. So I'm about 17 years old. And I just know that if I don't get out of Florida at that time, that I'm probably not going to make it. It was one of those times in my life where I could have gone a really different way. And so we get to North Carolina. Here I am trying to fit in again, trying to find new people. And so I met this guy, Chris, and we decided we were going to be engaged. He was a very violent alcoholic, and there was a lot of abuse that happened there. But in the meantime, I'm going to school. I'm working at a let's see, what do you call it? The assisted living, like a nursing home type of deal. And I loved it, but I wasn't making enough money to get back on my feet, and I didn't have any insurance or anything like that. So I decided to join the military. I figured that would be a good way for me to get some health insurance, get some school money. And honestly, people ask me, did you do it to serve your country? No, I did it for the money and to get on my feet. And that's just the honest truth. I just learned to love what I was doing while I was there. Let's see. So I get to the military, and you can't do any drugs. we so drinking became a huge part of my life for the 6 years that I was active duty. And within that, I suffered another rape within the military. This time I told somebody. And so I did really well in the military, and I got hurt, and I had to have multiple surgeries on my feet. And so that left me one day. I remember the exact day that I woke up and I was like, I'm not going to take these pills anymore. I'm done. I, and I couldn't because I was sick. I got the chills, and I was like, man, I'm hooked. Like that pit of my stomach was just like, I knew that this was not going to go well. And so this marriage that I'm in at the time, he was 22 years active duty, much older than me, and turns out to be narcissistic, very controlling, manipulative. And so my disease progressed as that trauma continued. I continued to go to the doctor, and got whatever I wanted at the time, all the way from Lortab to fentanyl. And I didn't know the dangers of fentanyl then. This was probably 2010, 2012. It was very new, and I think doctors were getting contracts to get it out, and that's how that goes. And so my doctor was like, "Hey, let's try this." And so when I got it, I used it like I was supposed to, but then I figured out that you could cut them up, you could smoke them, you could do all kinds of things with them. So I learned how to smoke them from intervention. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Like, oh, let me try this. It's so silly, but so and I'm continually drinking. That never stopped. I think it just got to the point where I was physically dependent on drinking. So I would wake up in the morning, I'd have to drink to feel okay, and then I would have to, do whatever opiates or and smoke or whatever I had to do to feel okay for that moment. So I think and every time I would go to rehab for my ex, and he would come pick me up and take me to the liquor store, and he'd have a bottle of Percocet in the truck. It was just, he didn't want to see me well.
Right.
He wanted to keep me sick. And so that kept me in that marriage for 12 years. I would not leave him because he had drugs when I would run out. He was the plug. He was, and it took me a long time to realize that that's, I didn't love him anymore. There was no love there. But it took one night, I just got so messed up, and I decided I wanted to die. I just couldn't go on living this way anymore. And so I decided to cut my wrist. I did it the correct way. It was just millimeters away from the main artery that was there. And so the doctor that was on staff that night, she came in the room and she got down on the bed with me and she said, "Hey, I'm an addict in recovery. And I want you to know that," I just got chills saying that because it was such a powerful moment. Like, she just started to share her a little bit of her story and how she's recovered, and she's now a physician's assistant and doing these things. And it was that first shot of hope that maybe I could find some kind of recovery and live after that, because I didn't know how to live without drugs or alcohol. Like I said, I'd get out of treatment maybe a few days, and it was just back into the same mess. So she asked me that night, she said, "Would you be willing to try treatment tonight? I can get you a bed tonight if you will go." And I said, "Absolutely," because number one, I knew I could get away from my ex just for long enough to detox that off of the stuff, and then get a clear mind to decide what I'm going to do. I knew I couldn't live there clean. So I did. I got out, and I rented a car, and I loaded up my car with my dogs and a couple totes. I just had some clothes, I just left everything there at the house. I just didn't care anymore. I just wanted away. And so I left and I came to Oklahoma, and my parents had moved here. I don't know, 976th move, but they were here. And so I called my mom. I said, I really would like to come where you guys are. And she said, okay, well, you have 2 weeks on our couch and you can find your place. You know, she had to set those hard boundaries with me because they didn't want me couch surfing and just doing my same old behavior. And so I understood that. I was like, okay, I'll come sleep on the couch for 2 weeks. And when I got in the car and drove away, I knew this was the beginning of a much, much better life. And even though I didn't have anything, I was scared to death. I just knew, now I know God was giving me that courage to get where I needed to go. And I drove 18 hours straight from Jacksonville, Florida to Oklahoma because I was too scared to stop anywhere. Um, so yeah, I get here, I sleep on my parents' couch, and doors just start opening. I start going to meetings, and within a week, I have secured a place where I'm still currently a resident, which is probably the longest I've ever stayed anywhere. And 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 I moved into this apartment with nothing, just my dogs and my totes, and slept on the floor, and that was okay. I knew I was safe, and that I was going to be okay. And so I did. I started going to meetings and really got into the literature, and got a sponsor and started connecting with some people. And that was the first time I really felt like genuinely, authentically a part of. I had never felt that connection, and I know today that just that one addict helping another is without parallel, because nobody else could ever speak to me like that ER doctor spoke to me, or with love and compassion and understanding for where I was at, and I didn't feel ashamed anymore. So I started working steps, and then I had to get really honest about some stuff. I was still holding on to some anxiety medication, and so December 15th of 2019, I was done with everything, and so I changed my clean date, and I've been going ever since. But now it's the life I have today is so incredible. It's nothing that I could have ever imagined. It's way better than anything that I thought, because I really didn't think I could be happy clean. I really didn't. I just didn't know that that was possible. And I started working with others, and that's what keeps me going on a daily basis, is working with others, and working the steps and working my program. And I go to meetings like crazy still, even over 2.5 years. And because I know that that's my medicine today. Like, that is what keeps my boat from sinking. The minute I walk away from that, I just know from people that have come back in, they're like, what happened? Well, I disconnected. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped calling my sponsor. I stopped doing these things. And so I'm like taking notes. I don't want to do that. Okay. I don't want to do that, because I have that healthy fear of not wanting to go back. Like, it scares the living crap out of me. So many times I should have died. I should have died the night I tried to kill myself, but by the grace of God, I did not. And I remember sitting in rehab thinking, like, what could I possibly do in life from here on out? What is my purpose? And so today I have that purpose, and it's sharing my story, whether it be social media. Tonight I'm speaking for a women's recovery group. I'm really excited about that. And just as long as I keep doing these things, and following this path, then doors just keep opening. And it's just, sometimes I'm mind blown by stuff that comes up, that I'm just like, wow, if I hadn't have gone through what I went through in my addiction, I would never be in this place today. I would never be, I think that's incredible. So that's about it I got for now.
I love that. Thank you so much for telling your story. And it's funny because they tell you that if you come around long enough, you'll hear your story like told by somebody else. I can relate to so much stuff that you said in your story. Like it is insane. And like thank God that you didn't die when that happened because you have a purpose today. And you guys can find Brandy. She's on Facebook, Brandy Deanne. I'm going to link it down below. She shares about her recovery story. You guys definitely should check her out. So let me just ask you one more thing, Brandy. If there's somebody watching right now who's in addiction, and they're looking for the way out, kind of like when you were in the hospital, like what would you say to that person?
I would say, if you're ready to go to rehab or get clean, go to the ER and tell them, "Hey, I want help." That's what I did. Even the first couple times I went, I may have not been ready, but I would go to the ER, and that was the best pathway into a bed. Um, and that you're not a lost cause. I mean, this is a disease. We are not morally bad people. What you've been through is not, you're not unique. And there's a whole recovery community out here that's waiting with open arms to grab you up and love you until you can love yourself.
Yes. Yes, girl. I love that. Thank you so much. So yet again,
You're
I'm
welcome.
gonna link I'm gonna link her page in the description so you guys can go and follow Brandy. And thank you guys so much for joining us on the Hope Shot. We will see you again soon.